So, how do we win drone warfare? In the last video, I talked about a firm named Anduril, and they make a form of UAS, which is an interceptor drone named Anvil. And I thought that in a world where UAS warfare is becoming far more normalized, which we're being told it is, it will probably be realized, experts say, within 5 to 8 years, where we're likely going to have to find more effective ways to combat drones as they become more commonplace. What is the best way to do it? And to me, only really a few ways are practical in the long run, at least that occurred to me. So I think it's worth talking about. First off, electronic warfare. This one is, the most obvious to me, and it doesn't have to be in a fixed setting. It can be attached to drones, it can be attached to munitions, but nonetheless, it is probably most powerful. You can attach it to mobile systems. It's not necessarily a system in itself, but it is a strategy. UAS obviously rely upon electronic systems. Generally, they have communication with certain manned platforms in order to function, in order to report back, in order to perform ISR. So electronic warfare is brilliant, and there's been excellent use of this in the Russo-Ukrainian war, where some Ukrainian units were using jammers effectively, electronic warfare, and this meant that Russian drones lost control. They forcibly had to be landed, and what that meant is that they weren't just knocked out of the sky, they lost total operational ability, other than the ability to effectively pilot it downwards gently. And what that meant is the Ukrainians could just go along and pick these up. And this leads to far better information gathering, so it means that the drone itself is not fully destroyed, which is why electronic warfare would likely be so successful when dealing with drones. And the promotion of electronic warfare is something that's really taking off at the moment, because obviously it's likely less expensive, means that there's less loss of life, and with these sort of systems, you don't have to expend anything. There is nothing that you're sending up like a missile that is going to explode and then, you're done with it. It's reasonably cheap in comparison to those options. Now, electronic warfare would be particularly useful because it is really the only system that can consistently work on all forms of drones. That is to say, of different sizes, of different kinematics, and it's something which can be implemented on multiple platforms. As I said, you can put it in the warhead of a missile, you can put it on a mobile trailer unit, you can make it a static post, you can put it on another drone, and it still has brilliant capability. You can give it to the normal soldier. Electronic warfare would be the only system which works consistently on all of these forms of drones. And not all strikes on UAS systems. Let's say I shoot it. That's not necessarily going to bring it down, but compromising electrical ability is certainly going to do that. It is certainly going to have an impact, so one can say that when it does work, it has the highest success rate. Now, these may be centered around mobile platforms as well, even in the hands of the ordinary soldier, but considering this huge benefit, it sounds like a good system going forward, something that a lot of countries are spending a lot of money on developing. Because the fact of the matter is, that's the one that's going to work consistently across all ranges of drone. It's not that specific, but that's a good thing. Second, we have interceptor drones. I mentioned Anvil at the start. Interceptor drones are drones which get rid of other drones. And for those who are developing this technology, they generally believe that if UAS warfare were to be properly realized, that the only way to win is really to fight fire with fire. At the end of the day, UAS warfare does not require unmanned air systems to engage each other once ISR and strike drones get superior resistance to electronic warfare. Once they become more hardy, more evasive of munitions. Now, this system works in a number of ways. For example, Anvil, which is true to its name, or the firm's name is Mars, their interceptor drone. Both of these drones effectively just use kinetics to destroy other drones. And by that I mean it just rams into it really, really hard and really fast, and damages it in the process, and that renders it unsuitable to continue flight. And after this, the Interceptor can, sort of safely return to base. It is a hardy piece of kit. It remains undamaged. Or even if it is damaged itself in that run, it can deploy a parachute of some sort, glide down safely, Now, the issue that people often find with this is that if you are deciding to make this commonplace, make drones all this hardy so that they're not that susceptible to interceptor drones that use kinetic force in order to just whack stuff out of the sky in order to break parts off, then you end up with effectively just a competition of which one can be more hardy, more armoured, more heavy, which may go against the idea of UAS warfare fundamentally, that being that it's agile. And also, if drones get more agile, then you have to have systems which keep up. But it's interesting. Kinetic interceptors are not the only way that drones can destroy other drones. You can also utilize, I think, electronic warfare systems, the deployment of net systems which sort of catch rotors and that sort of thing. The only issue with this is that one interceptor could take out a load of swarming drones at once, hypothetically, but it would need speed to do so. It would take quite a while. The technology we have at the moment couldn't take out an entire swarm of drones because physically it can't build up the speed in such a short space of time. And so the issue is that it requires a lot of drones. You would have to have pretty much at the moment a 1-to-1 ratio, if not something even higher than that, to ensure that every single drone is destroyed. If one drone gets through on the enemy force, then that's a bad day for you, particularly if it's some sort of a strike drone. So it would require quite a hefty amount of interceptor drone infrastructure, as it were, which would require certain communication systems between them, and it would effectively just become swarm against swarm. So that's what people think it might devolve into. But nonetheless, I think an interesting concept for the moment, something which is or has been realized, and something which will definitely have a pretty profound impact on how these systems are used. Next, laser systems. Now, I've talked about laser systems before, and they certainly can destroy UAS. Dragonfire would get through normal drones in a second or less. So it's an effective way not only to blind the system and sensors, which make it fall and prevent ISR value in the meantime before it's destroyed, but it will also mean it can't be fixed or used again. There is no chance. Something that's struck in the air by an interceptor drone may be recovered, potentially, because you send the interceptor drone into the territory that the enemy drone is operating in. Whereas laser systems, there is no chance you can fix it because, you have a lot of melting. Components get stuck together, and that drone is effectively void. So particularly for larger drone systems, it might be positive. If we can create lasers hardy enough to get through harder drone systems, then it makes it far, far more logistically difficult to maintain a high force with these sort of larger strike drones. Next is precision gun systems. I've talked about this at one point when I was discussing the pretty impressive capability of the Oerlikon anti-air system Skynex, and that uses a cannon and sensors on this mobile platform which can be towed by, some sort of a lorry. And that can deal with smaller UAS. Now, this would be pretty effective in taking out a swarm of drones, because if you, quite literally, spray ammunition in the direction of the swarm, one can pretty much destroy the entirety of that swarm in the process, so long as there is ample ammunition. Then precision systems can sort of take over, take the reins from there, and ensure that all UAS are destroyed. So people say it's not as advanced as lasers, it's not as advanced as interceptor drones, it's not as advanced as electronic warfare, but frankly, sometimes the old ways are the best. Precision gun systems are underestimated for this sort of stuff by, the general civilian population, myself included. Next, missile systems. Now, this is pretty obvious, but there comes a point when, for larger drones, take something like the Reaper, if electronic warfare doesn't work, doesn't reach, if a laser isn't going to do enough damage quickly enough, if an interceptor isn't practical or large enough to actually make a proper impact, if the gun systems aren't available or it's too high up, then a conventional missile is going to have to be used. We often forget that UAS, they're getting bigger. You can't knock a Reaper drone out of the sky with an interceptor. It's likely difficult to do it with some sort of gun. Laser systems aren't in the swing yet. Additionally, electronic jamming doesn't work that high up often, meaning you're either going to have conventional missile systems or electronic warfare missile systems which can do the same thing and get to the target quickly before it can strike. Or, at least, let's say, electronic jamming at that stage might be a bit hit and miss, so conventional might be the better way to go. And for larger systems, some missiles are only the real possibility. Something like Starstreak, potentially on a smaller scale, would be pretty adept at taking out these systems. It's old reliable, as it were. If a missile is really going towards a drone, there's little chance a larger drone can escape. However, this doesn't work for smaller, more maneuverable drones, such as if you have one of these large drone swarms. I am of the opinion that forces will need to mix probably mobile electronic warfare coupled with some sort of missile-based warhead electronic warfare, drone-based electronic warfare, drone interceptors, precision-guided gun systems, and potentially even some sort of conventional missiles for the destruction of larger drones, because in that situation often time is of the essence. As fast as interceptors go, they're not going to beat a missile. But it'll be interesting to see what's developed over the coming years and, what is done to deal with potential drone threats. So, those are the options for today. There's probably more, but I can't think of it. That's the end.